Can we rise for the pledge?
Yeah.
This will be nice to get done.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Fryrick,
Here.
Mr. Posnow,
Here.
Mr. Robinson,
Here.
Mr. Sanders,
Here.
Mr. Scalette,
Here.
Mrs. Schrader,
Here.
Mr. Sears,
Here.
Mr. Sullivan,
Here.
Mr. Toman.
Okay, thank you. A reminder to please silence your cell phones during the meeting. And this will be your first opportunity for public comment. All comments and questions will be addressed to the president. Board and staff members will not normally respond to comments or questions during the meeting unless recognized by the president for this purpose. Comments will be limited at the discretion of the president to 5 minutes or less. Do we have any takers? Okay. You have the planning committee meeting of October 7th and the special board meeting of October 14th. Are there any changes? I would submit that we approve them as they're submitted. Thank you. Mr. Sears.
Yes, I'll start with our estimated interest for the month of September, $68,634, and that's on all the funds and the CDs that we have in the district. You have a consent agenda as normal. Would any member of the board like any of the items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of the items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below-mentioned items.
Have a second?
Second.
I guess this can be a short vote.
Be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. I would like to recognize Stephen Sullivan. He came in and he's back, so we didn't chase him away. Welcome to the group.
Thank you very much.
And the board met prior to this meeting in executive session as permitted by Section 707 of the Sunshine Act for the purpose of discussing matters of safety. No official action was taken. Dr. Williams.
Thank you. Tonight we have Josh Lee from the All Sports Boosters to give us an update about his organization.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me tonight. Just a few pieces of information for you. First of all, given the current financial status of the Booster Club, we have increased the scholarships given each year from $500 to $1,000. It's typically 8 in a year. Sometimes it is adjusted based on the availability of funds, but we feel that in the long term we can increase that from $500 to $1,000. Also, at the beginning of this year, each team was given $300 added to their allocation, also because of having these amount of additional funds. Typically, I don't know if everybody's aware, although you probably are, teams earn their funds by team members and family members volunteering at the concession stand, sometimes selling tickets and other jobs. The funds are then assigned to the teams. That's anywhere from $100 to $300 per event. Because of the good financial status, we added $300 to each team at the beginning of the season. We had our first golf tournament in June this year, which netted about $7,000. I don't have the exact number with me, but it was a little over $7,000. We also added funds to each team's account from that event. If they provided a sponsor or a foursome for the event, they got $300. If they did not, then they got, I believe, $150. The officers, the current officers, 3 of the 4 board officers will finish their term at the end of this school year, so we're actively looking for president, vice president, and treasurer for next school year. We haven't had anybody on the current board indicate that they're interested, but we're looking. Additionally, since the last time I was here, there was a $10,000 donation to the Herb Schmidt relay event. The donor prefers to remain anonymous, but it is somebody who participated in the event in the past. So that's going to be $1,000 per year towards the event over the next 10 years, which is very helpful considering we lost one of our larger sponsors last year. The band boosters and the sports boosters and the band boosters have been, both groups, I would say, have new leadership this year, or parts of their, at least a portion of their leadership is new this year. We've been meeting on a regular basis to, the band boosters also participate in the concession stand, as I'm sure you're aware, so we try to work closely on that. It's not easy to do if you're not always face-to-face, so we started meeting with them on a regular basis. Meeting this week to begin the application process for 501c3. We kind of started it on and off over the last couple of years, and I guess with changing leadership and members of the club, we decided that this year we're going to actually pay for it to be done. We've had a lot of people try to help out over the years, and as I think you're aware, it's a big process. So this time we're just going to go all in and just get it done. We intend to have that done by the end of this school year.
What is your structure now, Josh?
In what sense?
Well, you are something, and you're going to apply to be a 501c3. What is your current form of organization?
I'm not sure I can answer that question.
It's probably a nonprofit.
Just a non.
Without a 501c3 tax designation.
We do, you're right, we do have an EIN number, so, yeah, just a nonprofit, but nothing in addition to that.
So is the implication that donations currently are not tax deductible to the donor?
That's correct.
Okay.
What, I guess, and I applaud you for what you're doing, and I think it's a needed service. What is the club's plan to outreach to the youth feeder clubs? Is there one in place, and is there something preventing you from doing that?
We've had discussion about, I really think, my opinion is that that's individual teams. We've had discussion about a junior high club because from time to time there's been need, uniforms, that type of thing, and it's always been that the high school all-sports booster club does not support middle school teams. So there has been conversation about actually starting a middle school club. But honestly, nothing specific about individual or feeder programs other than middle school. And I think, in my experience, that's really been up to individual teams.
Okay. I know some of them have 501c3 designated status, so maybe that could be an entree conversation, because they are feeding the high school teams, and knowing that the parents that support that could potentially be the leadership of the booster club, and they've already kind of progressed along different avenues as to where you're at. Like the lacrosse club is 501c3 certified. The football club is 501c certified.
Are you talking about the booster club providing financial support
No.
to feeder teams?
No, I'm talking about just opening lines of communication so that they understand what the booster club does.
Right.
And perhaps it leads to a financial linkage. I don't know. I'm not, but, you know, as of right now, it's my understanding that there's not a great deal of understanding between the youth sports clubs and what the booster club's doing. And we're not a big district, so it's kind of all hands on deck when we go through. And when you've got 10, 12 hands out because your kids are playing all kinds of different sports, it could get confusing for parents, and it could get confusing for the athletes as to what people are doing. So, you know, just maybe some communication might be helpful to improve the experience.
I think it might be helpful for the board to know what the All Sports Booster Club does, like in a nutshell, and the fact that how the Booster Club has really worked hard to be all sports.
Right.
Can you just summarize that briefly for the board, members of the board who might not be aware of, like, what do you guys do?
Sure. I think the primary function would be maybe not the primary function. The biggest thing is the first thing that I mentioned, which is the scholarships for senior athletes. It's also really changed in the last 10 years or so. When I used to coach the baseball team here, and at that time, funds from the Booster Club provided bonus, equipment, surplus, just anything over and above what you needed. What's really changed is that now that sometimes need to be used for things as basic as uniforms and that type of thing. Banquet funding at the end of the year, and there's a few different levels of membership. So membership funds and concession funds are where most of the money comes from.
And you still do sponsor some tournaments that are used as fundraisers? I mean, does that still happen? There used to be...
Fundraisers for the Booster Club?
Right.
The Herb Schmidt Relays would be the biggest one.
Okay.
There are a couple other, to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you exactly which ones they all are, but a few other sports provide hold tournaments that raise funds for the Booster Club. Volleyball, basketball, boys and girls basketball. There's probably another one that I'm not thinking of.
Yeah, I just think it's helpful to the...
Sure.
I spent some time in your shoes, so I get it, and I knew it had changed somewhat, so
Right.
I was just curious, like, what had changed and how it worked, so thank you for that.
Actually, the website, ysboosters.org, has a good amount of information if you think of anything after tonight. But I'll be glad to answer any other questions that anybody might have.
What you're doing is a thankless job.
Thank you.
Thank you. You get dumped on all the time, and you don't get thanked enough, and it's tough because, as I said, there's a lot of organizations that are out there with their hands out, and again, they all have good purposes. Just coordinating the effort, I think, is going to make everybody's lives a little easier in terms of understanding what's going on, because again, with 200 to 250 kids graduating each year, and we're trying to compete against the Centrals, the Dallas Towns, the ones where you got upwards of 700, 800 kids, it stretches us thin. So everything you've done, the golf tournament 7,000, that's
Great.
That's
That's
the first year, that's really, it was Matt Marshall's idea originally, and when the group of us at one point, I forget exactly when, said to him, we don't know if we're going to be able to pull this off this year, he said, no, we got to do it, we got to go through with it. So he deserves a lot of credit for making that happen. But yeah, to do that in the first year is really impressive. And that brings up another point. There's a lot of people, I think a lot of the other schools now have individual booster clubs for individual teams. But we have individual reps, so it's a large group of people doing these jobs and doing work and going and working in the concession stands when they can't find anybody from their team to come work in the concession stands with them. So they're doing a lot. To be honest with you, I probably have the easiest job out of all of them right now. Seriously.
sell it.
Yeah, right.
But really, they do day after day after day, in season and out of season. So, yeah.
But just to echo James's comment about the work you guys put in, and I personally value the fact that you are all sports, that it's not the team that has the, squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak, but that all sports are supported, the teams that, don't have the hardworking parents that, everybody else picks up the slack and makes it work for all teams, and that's important to me, and I just, hats off, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
But I think that's funny, Lois, saying to piggyback on you, that if you don't get your reps there working, you're not going to get your share of the money. That's why the reps wind up showing up selling during basketball games or football games. So it's incumbent when you see you've got a large cross-country team, you've got 50 or 60 kids out and they can't find 3 parents or 2 parents to get down, there you go. There's got to be something wrong. So it is, I think it's important that...
Tougher and tougher.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. Yeah,
And,
good.
when I say we have, not just the the reps, but now 3 officer positions that'll be open at the end of this year. And we have some time, but you don't want to fill those in May and June. You want to get prospects now, so it keeps getting more difficult to do that. Any other questions? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everything you do. Really appreciate it. What you may not realize is how important it is that it is an all-sports booster club. Just purely from a Title IX perspective, this is huge, huge. Other districts are dying to get in the position that we're in right now with their various booster clubs. So this is really important. And they've also been great to work with when we run into hiccups at the concession stand downstairs and things like that. So they've been terrific. Can't say enough good things about them right now. All right, superintendent's report is, you have that in front of you. I'm going to let Sophia talk about the stuff at the athletics and the postseason kinds of things that are going on when she has her report. So I'll touch on some other things. Facilities conversation that we have had about realignment, as opposed to using the word consolidation. We're using the word realignment, as it does make better sense. And our next topic will be class size. So what I've put in this report is a bunch of information that you've seen in bits and pieces in various places, but it's all, no pun intended, consolidated here in this report so that you can have easy access to this information prior to our conversation on November 4th, planning meeting. So I'll run through a couple of tables in the report. The smallest table on the first page, those are just our guidelines right now as they stand. I don't know if they'll change after November's conversation or not, but that's what they are at the moment. The first table the first larger table at the bottom of the page is our 1920 elementary class sizes. So in the white column, you have the number of students per that grade level, and the gray column has the number of teachers that teach those students. I'm not going to run through all the numbers in there, but that gives you a view of how things are right now at the elementary level. On the second page, if you took the number of students we have in each of those grades and you strictly applied the class size guidelines, those would be the number of teachers we would need for those grades. And wherever you see a bold number in the total line, that means it's different than what we currently have right now. So, for example, in kindergarten, for those 190 students, we would need 10 kindergarten teachers to teach the kindergarten students if we held strictly to the guidelines. Right now, we have 11 kindergarten teachers. So there's an example where we would go down 1 teacher, but there are plenty of examples where we would be going up. So that's what that table shows. And then the second table on page 2 shows how many teachers we would need if we had realignment now. If we currently had realignment district-wide K-12, those would be the number of teachers we would have employed. And again, the bold numbers mean it's different than what we have now. So we'd actually need 1 fewer teacher right now if we were consolidated, realigned K-12 right now. It's not the case, but that's just a hypothetical. Then I included historical class sizes. You've seen these tables before, but I added a little twist to these tables here on page 3. The elementary classroom students to teacher ratios in 2009 to 2018, so 10-year span. Because somewhere along the line asked for historical information on that, so we were able to dig that up through the help of Dr. Krauser, I think, and Dr. Ketterman, and Mr. Staub, and a few other people helped pull this data together. What I've done on this particular table is, you see 2009 to 2018, the ratios. Wherever there's a red number, that indicates that that's the highest number in that row for that grade level over the years. Wherever you see a blue number, that indicates the lowest number through that time period. So expecting to see is a lot of red in the right-hand column. And it's not the case. You can see plenty of years in the past where we've been high. there's no blue in the right column, and that I knew going in. But I was surprised at how, really, there's two spots that have red in the rightmost column. That was a little surprising to me. On page 4 is the secondary level. And I know that Jamie will tell me and remind me that class sizes are large in 8th grade, and it's true. It's true. But these are ratios of students to teachers based on the number of adults that work with the number of kids. There's a lot of co-teaching classrooms, co-taught classrooms in the middle school, so yes, there are. Yes, there are. There's still some of it there. All right. We'll argue about it later. But you can see, again, I used red where we are high in the past, historically, and blue where we're low, historically. And again, there's no blue or red in the right-hand column. Roseanne?
Can I just clarify the co-teaching, how that applies here?
Well, it's all the teachers divided by the number of students. So it's a ratio, it's not a class size. Because the guidelines call for total number of kids that are taught by a teacher in a department, kind of a thing, at the secondary level. So you've got special ed teachers, you've got other kinds of teachers, you've got related arts teachers. That all gets in the mix and divides into the number of kids. That's why you're not seeing 29 and 30 on this table.
Yeah.
That's what's throwing me.
Right, right. There certainly are plenty of classes that are in 28s, 29s. There's no doubt about that.
There's going to be an English class that has 29 students in it, for
Yes,
example.
and you're also going to have an English class that might have 18.
Okay.
So you're going to have everything in between, too. The methodology that was used to create these numbers is consistent over time. It's not like some different methodology was used for 2018 than was used in, say, for 2010. So the methodology is consistent over that time period. So you'd have to view these numbers relative to each other across the row.
To that point, and you provided some of this, so it's very helpful. But I'm particularly interested in what the maxes are, not just this average. So, for example, so this data can obscure a couple things. I mean, not intentionally, but I mean, there's some things this doesn't convey.
Correct.
So for example, if there is one cohort that is a smaller cohort relative to cohorts around it, there could be a single group that has disproportionately large maxes across their whole education relative to another cohort that has smaller averages.
I would say that's true at the middle level.
I'm just
Of
saying,
those
I
3
mean,
years.
it's possible, right? So in fact, we could have, some students who are getting repeatedly class sizes of 30, consistent with this data, because it could be offset somewhere else. So there could be some students, so that max data point, I think, is significant. And how that might, so for example, if in the last couple of years we've had classes of 28, 29, 30, where they were extremely rare 10 years ago, that could be consistent with what we're seeing here on this data. So that's of interest to me, sort of how the max has.
Yeah, and I think we gave the max stuff.
And you did.
At the last.
Right, so that was helpful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I just want to observe that that's something of concern that isn't brought forth in this data.
Correct.
Unless you pull out what those max sizes look like.
But the same methodology is used from year to year to year.
Yes.
So there is consistency in the final number on that table, even though there are classes of 30.
Potential outliers, yeah.
Yeah, there's always going to be some outliers, but to your point, you're talking about mostly the 8th grade group, That's our largest group in the middle school right now, like 250 kids, I think, Dr. Krauser?
It's, right now, it's looking at 259.
Yeah, 259. So normally they're in 230, 220, 230, so it's a bubble class. So they are going to have higher class sizes when they're in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade than, say, the other 2 grades in that building. So, yes.
Two things. So these numbers would look very different if we just counted core subjects. When we figured out these,
Yeah, but we would not have been able to do that with the historical
I
part of it.
understand that historically, but if we were to do it, if we wanted to start from today moving on, this includes your gym teachers and art teachers and all teaching staff. So that makes these, that's why when you look at some of your classes, you have these, 29s and 30s, and they're taken care of. The other thing is, it says this report grand total is 3347. Is that the infamous PIMS number that we're going to use for the rest
No,
of
if
it?
you look in the 2 right columns on the table, on the
That's-
page you're looking at, the mainstream
Okay,
and the other, that's why you're seeing a discrepancy in total number. If you take that, what we're talking about is on
I got,
the attached report that you get every month.
yeah, I got that, yeah.
On the rightmost column,
Mm-hmm,
rightmost white column, it says mainstream. There's 26 students in there, and then there's other
mm-hmm,
in the column next to it, those 27. You take those 27 away from
mm-hmm. That's where you get the 30,
3,072,
whatever.
you'll get the same number that's on the table. And
Okay, so is that the PIMS number then? I'm curious, which is that, what's the infamous October 1 number that people,
it'll be the October 1 number that's on the attached
that's right here,
report.
which is the 3347.
Yeah,
Okay, although that reflects all these, everything else.
347.
Grand totals, this report, 3347.
Of 9.
Oh, yeah, that's not for PIMS. 3347 is not for PIMS.
Okay, PIMS is the
Because that includes our kids in cyber schools and things like that.
That's the
not-
total. Okay,
Yeah.
the one we want is the 372 less the 27, the
Yeah.
345, which is the number that's over here.
Off by
Okay.
1, yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay,
That's right.
thank you.
You're welcome.
So when I look at your secondary buildings, the average numbers are lower. That's a true average, they appear lower than the elementary, the average 16.9, 16.9, and then when I look across,
Right, because the elementary number's just dealing with the actual teachers and the number of kids in those rooms.
right. So, but when you're doing this is more of a true mean
When I'm doing what?
for the secondary. When you're
Secondary?
dividing total by, did you look at it from a median perspective? Would that provide you any more insight to take into account if there's swings higher or lower? I mean, I know you can go max min and run the whole way through, but is the median dramatically different than the mean?
I don't honestly know the answer to that. I don't know if it is different or dramatically different. It's going to be different, but I don't know if it's going to be dramatically different. I don't know. I don't know that it makes any difference as long as you are applying the same methodology to each year, historically.
Right, but the median could take into account the swings in the class sizes.
It
And
could.
the median could also take into account
But this is a
you
straight
might-
calculation.
I agree. I'm trying to understand, on its face, it appears that there's lower student-teacher ratios. If I'm just looking at this and I just descended on Earth, it looks like the high school has as the kids progress through school, they're getting smaller classes. It's not reality, but
I
Yeah.
think it might be.
it could be in certain instances, and it could be much larger in
Larger in
others.
other instances,
Yeah.
absolutely.
No, it is.
I think at the high school level, you'll see fewer number of kids being taught by a teacher at the same time than you will at the elementary level in some places. Not so much in the middle school. Middle
Right.
school, you won't see that. You'll see a higher number of kids in lots of cases being taught by one teacher at a time.
Doesn't really reflect, I think what the concern is that it doesn't really reflect, if I have a general level world history class, I clearly have more than 17 students. I mean,
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
This is not class size, this is teacher ratios.
I know,
Yeah.
I think it needs to be repeated.
And it's all teachers too,
I realize.
librarians and,
We don't have access to class size data historically at the secondary level.
I see.
This is the only animal we have.
We
to
do
work
have
with.
enrollment by class though, correct? No, well, I shouldn't say class, but if we actually wanted to get some insight in terms of what's actually sitting in the box that we call a classroom, we could look at enrollment in algebra, for example, and say, well, across the spectrum, the class sizes are 23, 26, 28, 22, and 15. And it's that big one that I think has us concerned. Like, what's sitting in that
We
box
can do that for
during the
this
course of
school
the
year,
day?
and maybe last school year, maybe the year before. We can't do it for 10 years back.
I don't think that's important at this point. I mean, to me, it's like, it'd be great if you could do it, but right now, we can count the heads that are in this room, and it looks like it's big enough to handle them. If we had a discussion about the music program, this room wouldn't be big enough to handle them. Two different crowds for two different purposes. But from the average,
Just wanna
the
go to
average
this
might
wave
come
now
out
when you understand.
such that it could accommodate, and we'd say, we don't have a problem.
I'm not saying we don't have a problem.
Well, I'm just saying, how do we communicate that? These averages, I don't think communicate that, unless you have some
These
other
aren't
way of
averages,
interpreting that.
these are ratios.
remember, it's
All
a
right.
ratio. And it's
A
total
divided
number,
by B.
it's the total
From a
number of
management
teachers.
standpoint, how do we use these? What's it telling us?
This is giving you a perspective over time at the secondary level that there are some years that had higher student-to-teacher ratios than others. That's all this does.
Okay, so if we're trying to make decisions based on this, it's not that useful, correct?
Bless you.
Thank you.
I
In
would,
other words, is 16.9 good?
16.9 is a 16.9.
Qualitatively, there's not much you can say about that.
No, but we know qualitatively that we have large classes at the middle level right now.
Qualitatively, I think
That's
you
not
could say that it
communicated through
hasn't
these
changed
numbers.
dramatically over 10 years.
Quantitatively, it has not changed over a decade.
It ebbs and flows within, as
Right.
Lois Ann described, but across the 10 years, this is pretty consistent.
And what is the takeaway from a facility planning standpoint? How would you apply that to future planning for buildings and for configurations?
Well, if you're not going to change anything, we don't have to add on to the middle school, because the middle school can accommodate the number of kids that are in it now. I think when you're looking at class sizes, I think the area you really need to focus on is the elementary level. Because at the secondary level, you have flexibility to spread kids out in different ways with the related arts and the,
Wellness, phys ed. and-
yeah, the related arts, and those kinds of things. You more flexibility to spread kids out in a different way. At the elementary level, that's tougher, well, it's impossible to do differently.
The class sizes you're showing us for class sizes and teachers, that to me is a more true number of real class size. How many little people are sitting in those rooms
Right.
on average, as opposed to some of these that don't tell me how many people are sitting in it, maybe.
Well, no,
for
the elementary
secondary.
table does tell you that. Those are
That's
the
what she
actual
just
number
said.
of kids.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
do.
It's the upper division.
The upper
Secondary
level,
level.
You've just
it's
explained.
just,
Yeah.
Yeah, at secondary level, you can't.
you
It's-
can't.
it's an
I get
indicator-
that, because
different
you're
animal.
using, if you would, the only way you could compare apples to apples would be at the middle school, if you took your core teachers and used that, only those, and not your related arts, and not your phys ed teacher, and not your, some of these others. That would mean that we would be looking not at ratios, we would just be looking at teachers in a classroom.
Yes, we don't have that data.
We don't go back. I mean, if we could do it for the last year or so and then moving forward, I mean, we could change the paradigm in how we do it. So 10 years from now, you look back and say, oh, you know what I'm saying, you could do it. But right now, we have two different standards or methods of, and you gotta be sure that you read class sizes and then students to teacher ratios, because I think that is does that make any sense? Because the secondary level, you're including art teachers and gym teachers, and at the elementary level, you are not. You're only including the 6 classroom
It's not just that they're
teachers.
not included, Ellen, they're not even computed the same way. They're
that's-
totally different metrics.
That's what I'm saying, and why, so, you know.
If you saw a ratio that didn't include anything but teachers, these numbers would be larger,
Yeah,
but in relative terms, they would probably give us the same information that these give us.
I don't know if I
just
agree.
Moving number, the ratios might be
Over time.
a point or half a point higher across the board if you take out all these other
Well.
members of the staff that are included in this middle school and high school ratio. But I don't think you'd see a big change. You wouldn't see more variation in the numbers over time.
Well, I think this is a helpful discussion. I mean, I think every piece of data we get is helpful. I think digging down on this does matter a lot. I can convey that the class sizes, the actual class sizes of the core subjects, and what those maxes are. I mean, to me, that's an important piece of information. And some of this data can help us get to that, and some of it doesn't. And so the student ratio doesn't get that sort of information. But certainly, the actual class sizes, the number of people in the room, I think that's important information.
That's the information that Mr. Shirey gave us.
Yes, that's right. So we have some of that.
So that we do have that for the middle school.
That's right.
Report last week.
Yeah,
That's right.
last time, we do have that.
Just to tack on to that, I mean, as we're looking long range and how we're gonna configure our buildings and all of that, for me, the big ticket item is, I would like to avoid having a basic level world history class with 30 kids in it. I would like to avoid having a 7th or 8th grade English class that has, 28 or 30 kids in it. That's, if we're creating policy or recommendations or whatever, that's where I want my money to be, is when the rubber hits the road, is Susie in the 7th grade sitting down with 29 other students in her English class, and I would like to say, no, that's not happening. That's the big piece of information for me.
I don't want to cut you off, but that's conversation for November 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Something akin to idle curiosity on my part, and I'm happy to take the answer offline. Can we instruct class sizes from grade reports for individual classes? I'm not volunteering to do it, by the way.
That's what I heard. There'd be a lot of
The data's
lot of man
there.
hours involved in that.
Must be some.
I'm not sure we have the historical data to be able to do that. We could do it for a few years. Didn't have the same data system during that 10-year period.
To Joel's point, even going back 3 or 4 years would be helpful, and I think for some
Yeah,
discussion.
we'll have that plenty of time on the 4th to really dive into this.
Yeah. Okay, so the couple other tables in the superintendent's report, the October 1 enrollment numbers versus projections on page 4. The table at the bottom of page 4 shows the internal projections for all the grade levels, the actual enrollment for those grade levels, and the differences. You can see that I was way off in kindergarten, pretty spot on in first grade, a little low in second grade, and so on and so on and so on. The overall difference is 6 students off of the internal projections, which I'll take. The professional demographers table is on the next page. They were off by 12 students. We were 6 students low, they were 12 students high.
So it's really a swing of 18.
Swing of 18. Right. So, those are the enrollment numbers for October 1. They may not be exactly PIMS numbers, but those are what we have pulled at the beginning of the month. And then, of course, the enrollment report is attached beyond that, the enrollment report that you see every month. So, should be an interesting conversation on November 4th. Looking forward to it.
Yes, it should.
Does anybody care to have the research that we've produced so far? And
Very helpful.
I mean, the studies that we've talked about in the past. Because let's not lose sight of the studies, too, that talk about other things. We can rehash that on the 4th. Okay. Well, the report wouldn't be till the second meeting.
Okay.
But I'll put some in the weekly updates and things like that. Okay, and that moves us on to the comprehensive plan report from Dr. Krauser.
Alrighty. Well, certainly I have the privilege this evening to kind of really be the waiter to deliver the gourmet meal prepared by an amazing group of vested stakeholders in this steering committee and their efforts, their work, their countless hours. Really, this is that amazing kitchen staff you see behind to bring out this meal. This is my job just to share it. So kind of a little bit of where we are. This steering committee that involves a variety of different stakeholder groups. We've got a parent community, we've had students, administrative representatives, community members, some board members. Really set a course to set a direction for where we're going, those priorities and outcomes that we saw and set forth, and really look at where we want to go for future activities and initiatives. And that's the kind of overarching process of the comprehensive plan. It is a requirement by the state, but good planning produces good outcomes, and it was an essential part of what we needed to do. So the way that I developed the plan was to build it on a series of essential questions to kind of guide this plan as we move forward. So we engaged first with our vision and mission work and really looking at if we didn't have today's schools, would we build today's schools? With that outward look to the future of where we need to be and where we want to go and, of course, how we want to get there. Next, we dove into the data. What does it tell us? Where are our strengths? Where are our needs? And that really kind of honed us down to begin to craft the goals of this larger plan. Next, we moved into the essential questions on skills and dispositions, habits of mind, really got into the point of what is the purpose or purposes of school and why we're designing an education system the way we are, and how does that meet this end in mind. So it was really exciting, great conversations that really helped us prioritize those needs. You know, how do we accomplish all we want to do in 3 years and continue to move this motion forward? And then lastly, what will blank? And we put in each one of our goals and ideas look like if we accomplish this vision. And that really guided our measurements and evaluations. So kind of going back to the beginning then, really, if we didn't have today's schools, would we create today's schools? Really started us on our vision work and had the teams worked on great conversations, and they looked beyond. It's kind of that golden ring, the carousel's going around. It's just out of our reach. What do we want to do and how do we want to get there? And they set forth this idea, inspiring and empowering and emboldening our students to meet high standards, engage in a collaborative community that values students' personal growth, and encourages students to explore and define pathways to their future. Great conversation, really looking beyond where we want to go. And then, of course, in the conversations, how do we get there? What do we need to do to engage in these opportunities for students to find success? And one of the groups kind of crafted an analogy, and they talked a little bit like an immigrant. And that feeling when immigrants come to America, this idea, a hunger of wanting to get these things because it's internal. It's an internal drive. How do you teach that in a classroom? How do you teach that feel that they started at the beginning, it's driven by themselves and where they go? And really what that conversation started to come into was you do that with inspiration. And that was really the mission. So how do we task these activities? How do we guide us to this future that we want to see and we want to try to grasp? We do that by inspiring, and we inspire with this bold future. We talked about what it means to be courageous and really kind of go out and think a little bit more brave about the things that we're going to do. And in a sense, risk-taking came up quite a bit, but risk-taking in a sense that is driven by what we need to be successful and move forward. So the vision and mission work really was exciting, and the groups kind of crafted their way through that. So there's our vision, there's our mission. Now we're working hard to achieve it. Through that process, we funneled down to 4 broad goals and kind of called these 4 larger bucket areas. Student success. We're in the business of helping students find that personalized approach to learning, so student success was that first large bucket, and there's our goal. Number 2, district well-being. This is something that I think unless you've been on another planet and haven't had a conversation with someone involved in schools, we haven't talked about the well-being of our students and our staff and everybody who's involved, and how that is partly our responsibility to ensure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that they're finding success. And what does that mean? Great conversations about how we're destigmatizing mental health and making that being part of what we need to own it, embrace it, and inspire others to persevere through it. Teachers. This table, we've had lots of conversations about where teachers are and their influence in the classrooms. How do we continue to develop this highest quality teaching, and what does learning look like in the future? And then lastly, as an organization, what's our responsibilities to engage ourselves, to be fiscally responsible and use our appropriate resources, but engage with our stakeholders. Josh's comments when he was talking about, and you were kind of praising all the things that people want to be part of it, we've got an amazing group that's right in hand in our suburban community. How do we partner with them to move forward? So these kind of 4 broader goals then drove this committee to start to break them down into more of a sub-goal delivery on what we can do over the next 3 years to achieve this vision that we have for the future. So kind of looking at student success, the feedback from the groups really looked in 2 parts. Achievement and growth. We're talking about the business of where we are with educating students to be college, career, and life bound. And then that kind of lives into the second part with pathways and opportunities. So I'm not going to read them, but I'm going to give you a second to just read through those sub-goals and what that looks like under this larger umbrella of student success. Of course, tonight's an overview. I'm going to be sharing all this with you, but I'm kind of giving you a sense of, you can see how the thinking operates in 2 areas. One, about what we need to do when we think about achievement and growth and where we are in a progressive society with what we're doing to make our kids successful in the future, but also how we're offering these pathways and opportunities to find personalized approach for what students can do to find their own success. So each one of those kind of sub-goals then works into actionable items that we're going to continue to keep you updated on as that progress unfolds. Our second bucket was district well-being. And really this fits in that safe and supportive environment of how we're really looking at our social-emotional curriculum and its alignment to the needs of our students, what the environment looks like for all students. Trauma-informed education is a big part that's been coming down, of how we're responding to that as a teacher, how we prepare our teachers, but how do we also prepare our students. District safety. We need to make sure that we're being diligent of what we have internally as well as externally. And then looking at our systems and how they currently fit with the structures of today's students. Those are big questions about, and I'm going to use this that you all teed up very nicely. We look at the middle school schedule or the high school schedule. When Dr. Williams says, at a class size, you have the ability to adjust more. There's when we start talking about what do classes look like, what does the structure of the day look like, what does the structure of the day look like in the elementary, and how do these systems look more closely aligned to where we want students to be of the future. Focusing on our teachers, they're a primary indicator of where we find great success in students, as well as our curriculum and its alignment. And implement a curriculum mapping model, engaging teachers in the art and science of understanding what they're teaching, and then collaborating with one another to ensure that that's happening inside the classroom. We're starting at a big picture first to think about what are the transferable skills that we want our students to take with them as they move beyond high school into post-secondary schooling or college of their choice, and what those skills look like as they move forward. Individualized and professional. We know that teachers' needs are different. A PE teacher might have a different need than a science teacher, and how do we personalize their professional growth. Language and literacy acquisition and inclusive classrooms are a necessary part, and it aligns with Secretary Rivera's plan for the state of Pennsylvania. That is a requirement from this plan, but it was something that came up very clearly over and over again about the diversity of our learners and how we're meeting them, and how we're meeting that inside the classroom with keeping those students available to that rigor and keeping that exposure for them to have that inside the regular classroom. And then lastly, operational partnerships and responsibilities. And again, this is, we think about a system. Here we're talking about our community, our opportunities to build those transitions with our students, in and out of school, both internally, in between, from building to building, and certainly we know about those soft spots, leaving elementary, moving to middle school, leaving middle school, moving to high school. What are we doing for families that are coming into our community and how they move inside and outside of our buildings? We, of course, one there on a budget, and then a professional culture that's kind of that human end of things, of what we're doing to inspire the individuals to want to be passionate about what they're doing. We're in the personal business, and when teachers are feeling comfortable and inspire themselves, that transfers in the classroom, and it moves the whole organization forward. So, 4 kind of broad goals broken down in these sub-goal categories that then were aligned to actionable items. As this plan becomes the process, and I'm going to share with you in a minute, we're going to talk about how those actions are going to be unfolded and how we're going to share with you as we progress through that. What I did was worked with the planning committee, and just to kind of give you a sense from their words, there is a little background audio, but I think it's a nice way to look at these kind of questions, both from students, community members, we have board members sharing, we have administrators sharing it, with this bigger picture about inspiration, and I keep saying this, kind of a hungry feeling, because we have to have it internally. We have to want the students and the parents and the adults and the teachers want to strive and reach for where we're going and how we're going to achieve these great opportunities. So, if Wendy would push play for me, we'll start off with Leon talking about what this process has done to inspire him.
And just intend to work hard. You actually have to know what to do next yourself. You have to be motivated, and you have to have knowledge about what is the next step I ought to be taking.
Our teachers are always looking for new opportunities and new ways to reach our students, and I think this plan is going to give great direction. For them, we all recognize that society has changed, and therefore education. We give kids has to continue to change and evolve, and this is going to give us a lot of direction for that purpose.
Inspired me as a board member to do whatever I can and to share with our board to do whatever we can do to offer experiences to our staff so that it can filter down to the students and have them become really the best they can be.
So I can talk all night about it, but the context was so real. It was exciting. We dug really deeply into that conversation about knowledge and what knowledge was of the past and what is the future. And you kind of heard that opening where, you know, future employers and the society we live in doesn't care so much about what you know. It's what you can do with what you know. And recent research, and they're interviewing these top companies, they're also saying, you need to be creative with what you know. If you're coming to the table and giving me an answer, that's great, but we need you to understand what it means to reinvent your job, reprioritize your job, and create new things, and that's that area and the context that was built. And kudos to the team as they dug really deeply into this idea about what we need to do to prepare students for that kind of environment. And we've said it over and over again, that learn-to-learn mentality, to understand that I have to be a learner, and what does that mean? And that came that hungry idea of where we want to do as we process through that. So, engaging process, and certainly from beginning to end, but it is not over. We have a lot of next steps, and I'll share this kind of summary with you. But we do have the current plan in place on public review. These are requirements by the state of Pennsylvania. 28-day public review and comment period. It's published on our website. I'll get a link to you after tonight's meeting. It's a 115-page document. So tonight was the overview. Great document. If you want to dive right in, I certainly encourage you. The board will ask for an official vote to approve the work of these individuals and their plan for the next 3 years. That published plan will then be approved and submitted to PDE to the secretary to review and give a green thumbs up for us. At that point, what we'll do is I'll publish that plan in a formal process, and I'm going to create a summary publication. I believe an executive summary of an organized plan of what we just talked about tonight, but a little bit more specificity with those actions and what does that mean and what does that look like for you as a board to monitor our progress, as well as a group of stakeholders with our teachers and our administrators and how that will unfold. That plan will begin implementation process through 2020 through 2023. The ongoing actions that I think are critical to this plan and the process moving forward is to the communication and distribution. We talk about what it means to inspire and how these skills evolve. It comes by the championing of these concepts and these ideas. So the vision, the mission, the goal, strategies, we're going to communicate that in a variety of different ways. I believe it's both personal, on a personal level through administrators to teachers. What does that look like in visual sense? What does that look like in audio sense? How do we share these resources to our community as well? And then the committee at the last meeting talked a lot about how we can champion that, and what does that look like by visiting our stakeholder groups, sharing out what the plan's doing. Then I believe it's our responsibility to continue to produce to you our progress on that plan, transparent to the board, but also to the community as a whole and the vested stakeholders. So at a minimum of 3 times per year, I'm going to provide a very formalized approach. Here is our progress, here's how we're achieving our goals and actions, and this is the progression that we're making. At the same time, we want to make sure we're keeping those feedback loops open. Because one thing we know about good planning, and this was kudos again to the team, if you lockstep yourself in to say this is what's going to happen in the next 3 years, you miss the bus. Because the world is changing way too fast. We have to be flexible and responsive to what's going to happen in the next 3 years. Those of you that are familiar with the book by Thomas Friedman, The World's Flat, great book. When he wrote that book, Facebook wasn't even on it. And within 4 years after he published that, Facebook, Max, all of those things just rocketed a change instantly. We have to be aware of that, and I think that's the exciting part about this team. They embrace that idea that we need to be flexible and responsive to what we're hearing and what the needs of our students are. Do we have a strategic direction? Absolutely. Do we have a specific plan? Absolutely. But are we smart and savvy enough to know that we have to respond to the future? Absolutely. So it's an exciting part. We're going to be transparent and flexible as we move through it. Again, it was my pleasure and privilege to be the waiter to serve up the hard work from this group. We're excited by it. We've been working already kind of at this point of what it means to inspire one another and be courageous and be bold in what we're doing to truly get those students to make that last grab of what they want to do to embrace their success and where they want to go for college, career, and life. And that's the comprehensive plan as an overview. There's a quick snapshot of the many, many players and the many activities that we're doing. You'll see some familiar faces, but you know, it's one of those activities that you wish you could just keep going because the dialogue opens new doors and new pathways. But it is a good point for us to stop, put it in paper, and then move forward as we continue to have these conversations in the direction. So I threw a lot at you.
Where do you leave this for public comment here?
There'll be 2. I put a digitized copy on the website with a link to the plan and my email address for feedback. I'll keep a hard copy here available as well. There was a time that the state required you to publish that in a public library. That requirement has since been removed. By the age of electronics, I think they're offering you the
It's pretty easy to find on our website.
There's a comprehensive plan page. Yep.
Okay.
So as soon as you click on it, it will take you right to that plan and you can view it. I will, after this meeting, I'll summarize and provide all that to you, as well as to some of the questions that were asked earlier.
I
Yep.
always feel that it's sometimes harder to find, and the harder it is
Absolutely.
to find, the less chance there is that anybody will even try to take a look at it.
Absolutely. And my plan this evening, and that's kind of why I gave you that briefing statement before we started tonight, it should be in your packet with your items, was to kind of just provide an overview. I hated to give you a large manual without an index or table of contents to provide some components. And again, that plan has a lot of, I'll say, state-required pieces. You got it.
Is this one of the things you're going to be able to upload to the state so we're not going?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We take care of all that.
They've perfected it now.
Well, I don't know if I'd go that far. I will say this.
It can't be quite as bad as it was.
I will say this, the state of Pennsylvania has changed the entire portal. We currently, I'm operating in one program. They have created a new program and made some changes to it along the way. So when we go back to this in 2 years, it'll be through a new program and a new process that's to be done a little differently. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But inevitably, it has kept the star in the right direction, which I commend the state for, and Secretary Rivera, about what we're doing to kind of really focus on those big themes. We need to address equity, plain and simple.
Do they have a time frame? Does the state have a time frame in which they must respond once you have sent this entire document to them?
I haven't been able to find that. I'm pretty sure that they have a pretty large team of respondents that will kind of do that first proof checking. But I believe, and maybe Dr. Williams can add more, it should be pretty quick. I feel pretty confident the plan is in place.
Particularly, if that's their critical review before we vote on it in November, or
No.
it's after?
Correct.
Okay.
The plan has met all the certifications that are required for submittal.
Okay.
Your vote is to say this is our plan. Anything from there wouldn't derail the plan. It might be they need a certain language differently or a timeline faced differently. But and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Williams, but the nuts and bolts of what we're submitting through this group, the steering committee, will really be the heart and soul of it.
Thank you to you and your colleagues for all those people. It's a lot of time. Been on that many times.
Yep.
It's a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot
But
of
well worth
thinking.
it.
Yeah.
It's great stuff. I will say that one item that I believe the state has done, having been on many of these myself from the other end, is that they have reduced that window, what used to be 5 years with interim, to 3 years, because they've embraced the idea that if you're planning 5 years out, you missed the bus. Really, because, I think in 5 years, the world's going to be very different than it is even now.
Different in 18 months or 2 years, which I'm assuming this plan allows you to go in and tweak it and let them know you
Correct.
tweaked it, and they get all excited that
Yeah.
you're making changes as you go along.
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Scott, this is maybe not fair. I'm looking forward to reading it. Can you give me an example of what you would consider a risk that you might take that would improve outcomes, that you would consider risky?
A risk that we will do to improve outcomes.
That might appear in your detail or not,
That's a good question. I don't know if we action it out as a risk-taking, but as in maybe something that had traditionally been in place for a long time in an antiquated sense. So, for example, one of the actionable items is to truly investigate the way in which the structure of the school day operates. We're already doing that now with school start time. But it also investigates the way that a classroom structure works. Where does length of the class, length of time, for example, Ms. Geyer, she might not need 180 days of 42 minutes to master the same math concepts as the student beside her. So the risk would be...
Why is he looking at you, James?
You don't know that. So the risk is to start to say, how do we get more personal and say, what is it that Ms. Geyer needs in her classroom, and what is it that Mr. Sanders needs in his classroom that may look different, and take a risk to say, we're telling him prescriptively before he walks in, he needs 180 days at 42 minutes a day to get exactly what she needs for 180 days for 42 minutes a day. The risk might be for us to say, let's investigate why are we doing it that way, and what should we be doing that's best for her and him.
That's fair.
Yeah. It's a good question, you caught me right there.
So we'll be looking for board approval on the voting meeting in November, so it can fit the PD timeline. Kudos to the whole committee that was working on this plan. It was a very broad-based committee. Dr. Krauser did a really nice job of, sometimes it's like herding cats in some instances, but by and large, it was a great, not by and large, it was a great process that was implemented very well. I just want to thank you for that. You're welcome. All right, and do you have any? Okay, Dr. Stoltz will be telling us about...
Thank you for having me. It was hard to decide. There's so much going on, so I'm probably sharing too much information, but I'll try to do it as eloquently as Dr. Krauser. I just wanted to start first with our current status. Our staff, for the most part, rolled over from last year. We have the addition of a new art teacher. We now have a new nurse. Thank you very much for that. We're fully staffed with our nurse. but it was really nice to start the year pretty much with the staff that we had last year. We are growing and growing, 31 new students since we started the school year. And we always like to look at our Ls. Our total right now is 37 Ls, representing 17 unique countries and 11 unique languages. And if you click on there, it will show you, you can do it on your own time, but it shows you all the different countries that are represented by our students at Yorkshire. It took out the students' names, but it shows the countries and all of the languages. And I should say we now have the addition of another half-day L teacher. So thank you very much for that. Growing and growing. As Wendy gets back to the screen, I must say that the most beautiful thing is the excitement. It's like a birthday every time a class learns that they're getting a new student. And the parents always love it when I give the building tour and the kids are just sitting there with bated breath. They just love getting those new students. And I really think it's the climate that the teachers create in those classrooms for that welcoming tradition. Okay, going on to traditions and community connections. The traditions, particularly at the beginning of the school year, are what rally us all together. We started even before the school year started with family movie night. That's become a great tradition. It comes right off of our kindergarten popsicle time. And this year we gathered in the gym because it was wet outside. But it's just a nice way to bring our families together. We have to educate our students in our 4B rules. So the Queen Bee, who is retired teacher, Karen Moyer, still comes back to be our Queen Bee to help with our rules. She even bought herself a new Queen Bee costume. Yes. I was like, is that a new one? And who paid for that? She bought it herself. Our teddy bear parade is a great tradition, and it is so wonderful being part of the high school tradition. I think that is very unique to York Suburban. Our kids love it, and I do think we always win the prize for being the loudest. We're very good with our cheers and our songs. On Friday is our dance-a-thon, and Mr. Tome is not here this evening, but his wife Jerry really leads us in our dance-a-thon. On to community connections, which is something Dr. Krauser was talking about, building those community connections. We are now in our third year of partnering with St. John Lutheran. They started the year with fully packed backpacks, 10 backpacks per grade level. For those families that come that first week of school without the backpacks, it's so wonderful to give a fully loaded backpack to our students. We are up to 35 weekend backpacks, again, through St. John Lutheran. And this year they are supplying holiday gifts, including food, to 25 families. And when I say families, it can be the aunt, the grandparents, the mother, the father, through St. John Lutheran. We also work with Luther Memorial for our school supplies. Our scouts help, and on the next, if you'll oblige me, I threw in a couple, but you don't have to get to that, but on the next screen, how we use our scouts. Our scouts are great for helping to come to our evening events, and they serve us popcorn and popsicles and all that good stuff, so we work closely with our scouts. York Area United Fire Department, they come in the summer and they read in our summer library program, and we use them through our fire prevention. Martin Memorial Library, they come and they try to get kids excited about getting their library card. The Impact Foundation continues to be a strong supporter, and they just bought us a new shelving unit because we were running out of space. And Junior Achievement, we continue to use them when we talk about career awareness. Now, things I'm excited for in the future when I come back and do some more of these presentations is inspiring a bold future. So Dr. Krauser there's a group of teachers that have spun off of our whole comprehensive plan and curriculum building, and he has purchased for them the Bold Moves book. So I had 4 people in my group, and then somewhere Dr. Krauser said about having a book club. Well, my 4 people took that they invited the staff. So, Dr. Krauser, can you get me some more books? And he did. So, Thursday mornings at 7:30 in our, what's this called? room, anyway, we meet, and by week we do book studies, and it's engaging, it's inspiring, it's exciting, so thank you for helping us really think of what's antiquated and how do we move that to more contemporary. So thank you for that. That's ongoing. A lot was social emotional. So as I was reading the comprehensive plan, I was thinking we're starting to peg into that. Yoga in the classroom, we have a $1,000 grant where we have yoga in the classrooms via videos, very professionally done. Trauma-informed mindful lessons of self-regulation. We have, through another grant, we have WinKinder coming and training our teachers. So part of our grant helps with substitute coverage, so our teachers can be informed with self-regulation and helping children in the area of mindfulness, and then how that's going to roll into how we use it within our classrooms with our morning meetings. And then the last thing that I'm excited about is I've struggled a bit with what does career awareness look like for in a primary classroom other than junior achievement. So through grant money, we're able to find this Ravi-infused learning, and what it is career awareness, and I'll be reporting on this later, but really it's snippets of, for example, the career, aerospace engineer, and then there are STEAM activities around all of these different careers. So, again, I'll be reporting on that. So, past, present, and future, I'm excited for a lot of what's going on at Yorkshire. A lot of bold things happening at Yorkshire, so thank you.
And Mrs. Jackson for the secondary level.
All right, so at the high school, we had quite a busy week this past week, and Dr. Ellis kind of took a look at our Wednesday, which was going to be a little disrupted through the PSATs, and decided why don't we do everything that day. And he put it together like a masterful puzzle. So last Wednesday, we actually had all of our juniors taking the PSATs. Then we had some seniors opt to take the school day SAT during the school day. And then we also had our sophomores and seniors who were there take the PA Youth Survey, the PAYS survey, which collects anonymous data from our students. So that occurred in the middle of the day. And all the while this was going on, we had a core group of teachers taken out for the high quality teaching and learning who were also inspired. And I'd say we had 12 or more, and we had minimal coverage needed at that time with substitutes and the like because of the masterful puzzle that Dr. Ellis put together. So that day actually was largely uninterrupted for the freshmen. So they still mostly had classes going on as normal. In order for them to then have a little bit of a disruption on Friday, which was absolutely amazing. We actually had Junior Achievement come in and do a STEM summit with our freshmen. And in this summit, they included hands-on activities and workshops related to possible careers within the STEM umbrella. You saw the trades there, plumbing, electric. There were science careers represented as well. And the freshmen would go from station to station doing these hands-on activities. The people who were leading this were business partnerships with the Junior Achievement. And we really needed to try to tap into their partnerships in order for us to hopefully have more career activities later in this year. So a wonderful idea came about from our Link crew, which has grown this year. And our Link crew students actually did the meeting and greeting of these business professionals who came in order to kind of ask them, would you be willing to help us out in other things throughout the rest of the year and kind of put more of a student face to our school and create those partnerships with them. Our Link crew actually also did the schedule for all of the freshmen, and that helps make it much more seamless. Some of the Junior Achievement representatives there said they couldn't believe it was our first year doing this because it ran so seamlessly for this activity. The freshmen were excited. You could see it just by looking at them. Freshmen that we never thought would buy into this, that we thought would be in the office sitting there saying, I don't want to do this. We didn't see any of them at all. So it was amazing. It was really good. We also had some of our parents volunteer to be a part of this, and again, those partnerships that we hope to continue to grow as we look to do more career awareness throughout the year. So, that's a week.
Thank you. And that concludes our very brief superintendent's report.
Ms. Mason?
Thank you. You have before you the business office report, which includes items A through D. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, I would ask that a motion be made to approve the below-mentioned items.
So moved.
Second. Questions? I guess this can be a short roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes. And then for the informational items, you have the monthly dining review report and the sales activity report. Any questions on them? That concludes my report.
She was faster than you were.
I noticed.
Ms. Geyer?
Hi. So I would like to start my report by saying our students, as the marking period is coming to a close, still remains to work hard in and out of the classroom, particularly with our sports. So for our boys and girls cross country, just on October 15th, we had our YAI AA meet. For the boys, congratulations to sophomore Cole Adams for being our YAI AA cross country boys champion, and our boys also got first, and our girls got fifth. And then this Saturday, our districts will be held at Big Spring High School. The girls run at 11:30 and the boys will run at 12:15, and states will be on November 2nd. For girls volleyball, the YAI AA playoffs for the first round is actually being held tonight against Southwestern, which should be finishing shortly. And then districts will begin, the first round of districts will begin at Berks Catholic against Daniel Boone this Saturday. And then for girls soccer, unfortunately we lost the first round against Central 5-0, but then our district's game, our first round is tonight against Conrad Weiser at 7. And then for boys soccer, we also lost the first round of counties against Dallastown 2-0, but we also here actually have our first round of districts against West York. And then for football, we still remain undefeated in first in division. Districts will be on November 1st and then also on November 8th. And just this past week, our most recent game against Gettysburg, congratulations to Savion Harrison for being named a Max Preps USA Football Player of the Week in the Mid-Atlantic region for rushing 324 yards and 4 touchdowns on 24 carries, and setting the school record for rushing yards in a game. And then on the musical side of the district, we had a showcase at Red Lion that, from my knowledge, went very well, along with our fall concert. And the Crucible will be this weekend, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 7:30. Tickets for students are $6 and $10 for adults. And then our students are also giving back to the community by having our fall sports teams, members of our fall sports teams, going to elementary schools and serving lunch, and which everyone seemed to enjoy, along with our Impact Foundation restocking backpacks and building shelves into the new schools, or into the schools.
Good, thank you. The committee schedule is posted online. Mr. Scalad.
Well, thank you. The Communications Committee report. The district is continuing its efforts to improve communications, including gathering survey results that are about the process whereby the district is communicating to all its constituents. The district had a press release to run in the Community Courier that is sitting at the Community Courier right now. Again, this is to solicit information from community members who may not normally visit a website. And the columns in the Springettsbury Township newsletter and the Spring Garden Township newsletter are continuing. This is a process, again, whereby the district can communicate to the taxpayers about what is happening in the district, and again, soliciting their input for the best way to communicate with them. The Communications Committee welcomes suggestions and ideas on the way that York Suburban School District communicates. That concludes my report.
Mr. Sears?
Yes, Finance Committee met on October 16th at 5 o'clock. The minutes are available now from September 18th for your information. I'll give you a little bit of a recap on the administrator items from the agenda first, and the primary reason, I guess, for the meeting was to hear the presentation by Toby Putt of AIA. This is our health insurance consultant, among others. He took a look at the plan for plan years 2018-19 and 2019-20 and told us that the actual plan cost in 18-19 was $192,000 lower than the LBT budgeted rate, so there was a savings in what we paid in terms of premium. The plan cost projections for 19-20 are approximately $65,000 higher than last year, but there are also some increases in enrollment. 2019-20 program initiatives, which I found to be interesting and pretty impressive. We've enrolled in something called the OSS Direct program. We've been involved in that since July of 2019. 37 of our members have used the program at an estimated net plan cost savings of over $110,000. So it's taken off fairly impressively. We have two mail-order drug programs, one for brand name and one for generic. The brand name program is 7 months in. We have 100% participation. Plan savings to date, $22,314. Member savings, $38,454. So again, very impressive results. Generic drug mail-order program, 7 months of data, 100% participation. Plan savings, $32.51, but more importantly, member savings of $79,800. So thanks to the members for participating. These are typically very slow to absorb into a new program, and we've done, I think, a pretty remarkable job. Jamie, thank you for communicating the importance and the financial benefits, as well as, I think, the benefit to our members. Corrine then moved to the adjusted index. This year it's been set at 3.1. The base index in Pennsylvania is 2.6, so that difference reflects essentially some distress in the district at raising money. We have no further exceptions, so if there was any discussion of exceptions in the past, that's moot this year. We moved on to budget items and discussed the one, I guess, additional area for raising taxes, which would be targeted debt. We're really not in a position to do that, and we will consider the opt-out resolution, or can do that, I think, in November. Fund balance, projected surplus of $900,000, and we'll have a detailed explanation of that during the audit report at the November 13th Finance Committee meeting, so please plan to attend that. There will be an amendment to the budget to reflect the board's decision on safety and security on that grant. The net grant amount is $84,856, and there will be some discussion as to what the appropriate ways to account for that in the budget. The safety grant for the current year submission is due 11/4, which is why we had Scott's presentation tonight. And we understand it will not include personnel because that is not sustainable. There was no public comment at the meeting. Our next meeting is November 13th at 5 p.m. right here in the boardroom. That's my report.
Thank you. And one of the interesting things, and Corinne, tell me if I'm right, I believe when we estimated the health plan, we estimated at 298 participants.
Correct.
And we ended up with, what was it, 230 or something? So we had a much higher participation rate than we originally thought. And we're still able to save money, so.
Number of participants, mean? Our number of participants was 306.
Yeah. Okay. Personnel, Mr. Robbins.
Thank you, Mr. Posnell. The minutes of September 12th are provided. Consent agenda. You have before you the personnel report, which includes employment positions, reappointment of winter and spring coaches and volunteers. Would any board member like any of these items considered separately, or are there any questions on any of these items? If not, the chair moves approval of the below-mentioned items. Question from Mrs. Fryer.
Yes. Under employment, Tracy Gregory, part-time paraprofessional. So with part-time people?
We are under a situation where we have to maintain status quo because of the pending union vote.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Second. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
Sometimes we need a little push. I guess this can be a short roll call vote.
This will be considered a unanimous roll call vote unless I hear votes to the contrary. Hearing none, motion passes.
You're on a roll. Keep going.
Legislative update. Well, after conferring with some of my colleagues on the board and Dr. Williams, it seemed to be appropriate to extend an invitation to Secretary of Education Rivera to discuss matters pertaining to school safety, to get his perspective on some of the current trends. So we've extended an invitation to Secretary Rivera, and we're waiting for his response with breathless anticipation. In addition, it seems that both parties have now selected candidates for Senator Fulmer's seat. It might be appropriate if we extend invitations to these, what's the word I'm looking for? These public servants to be, these nominees, to come and visit our district, because I think heretofore Senator Fulmer always had a tendency to overlook us as part of his district. That is something I think we should not allow to continue.
He's Springettsbury, but not.
Not all of Springett's even. Not even
He's got about
just a little
that much of Springettsbury.
Yeah.
But that much is still that much, so.
And it's a very important part.
There's several of them.
And I live there too, so,
Yeah.
enough said.
And it's my
Maybe
point.
you could
Okay.
send him a map of where we are.
We could do that, because we actually had to do that with Representative Gillespie to convince him that, yes, in fact, he did represent our district. Even a smaller proportion than Senator Fulmer, but it's still our district, by heaven. So, if there are no objections, we shall extend such an invitation. That concludes my report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrari.
I have no report for the LIU JOA at this time. In York Adams Academy, I'm pleased to report we continue to have 14 of our 15 seats filled, with several people in the pipeline getting ready to come. And at our next meeting next week, we will be looking at, taking a first look at our budget for the 2021 budget year, whatever that is. It seems very far away, but we're going to take a look, because that has to come back to the board sometime by February the 1st of March, so we can vote on it here. So, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. York Adams Tax Bureau.
Meeting next Monday.
County School of Technology.
Yes, the School of Technology is also in the process of doing the budget for the upcoming year, and we can have more details about that. I believe will be up for a vote at our meeting the end of this week. I also wanted to share that we had a York Suburban student who received recognition as a Student of the Month at the School of Technology. This goes back to September. He is an automotive technology student, Cameron Lubecker. I'll just share a couple of sentences about him. According to his automotive technology teacher, Cameron has been a stellar student the past 3 years, and it is enrolled and participating in the IB program during his senior year. He's a focused, dedicated student and an example role model for his peers to follow. Cameron exemplifies the 6 Spartan values, as can be attested by myself, Mr. Kessler, and his academic teachers, both past and present. So I wanted to share with you and recognize Cameron for that honor, and I guess it's kind of tradition that we send him a letter acknowledging that recognition. So we have a meeting the end of this month, or the end of this week. Anything, James, on from the...
Nope.
The new gym construction has begun, and that's ongoing, so that concludes my
Thank you.
report.
And I would mention that, in case you haven't heard, there's an election approaching in a few weeks, and that will be followed by a board reorg, and I have asked Mr. Toman to serve as the, whatever you call it, chairman of the... Temporary president and chairman of the group looking at nominations. Thank you. The board meeting schedule is posted, and this is your last opportunity for public comment.
I'd like to ask for some time either during your report. I just attended the PSBA conference and I'd like to give you a few little tidbits I picked up there last week if you want to allow some time in the agenda.
Okay. Okay, sure. I think we're adjourned. Thank you.